Good morning, friends. Good morning, good morning. How are you this morning? I pray you're well, that staying cool in some of this humidity. We are in these long days of summer here. Hope they're treating you well. Good morning, everyone. All right. Here we are, and let's get going. All right, good morning, everybody. It is the 9th day of July on this Tuesday at 11:11, and I'm glad you're a part of this journey as we have been away for a bit and had a little holiday over these last weeks, and so now we are back. And so I'm glad you're back with us and a part of this time. I want to read you this. It's kind of a famous piece, but it's so beautiful that we just want to come back and spend a little minute, spend some time with it. This from Paul's words and his letter to the church in Rome. And this is from the 4th chapter. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say rejoice. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. What you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. I always love this because it ends with Paul's usual humility. Be like me because you've seen these things in me, and now he truly understands himself as this vessel of grace in a way, because there is this way in which we have in which he really felt appointed to that. But and it's one thing for us to read this and to hear this text, this rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Let your reasonableness, let your steady soul kind of thing is what he's talking about there, be known to everyone who encounters you. This experience of being with you, let it be, this steadying influence. That's what he's pointing towards, and that's, I think, you can certainly say that's what Paul pulls off. But what we don't know about this, and what we forget often, is that Paul is writing this from prison. He's writing this in shackles. He's writing this in a jail cell in the basement of a prison in Rome to his church in Rome. It changes the tenor of it a little bit, doesn't it? To say rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice. Paul doesn't have a lot to rejoice about right now. He's in the pokey. And what he's offering and what he's pointing the church in Rome, which is also at under stress, under strain, under suspicion by the authorities, he's offering this way of how are we to be in this place where the walls, quite literally for him, are closing in. And what he's suggesting here, I think, is powerful beyond measure, and it's one of the things that I'm seeing. One of the problems or maladies or injuries. It's I don't want to say the world's all screwed up. That's not my point. But it's a real affliction. Maybe is the best word I can come up with that I see upon people everywhere. That they're really afflicted with this sense of what the ancient church would call rumination. This notion of thinking about something and thinking about it and thinking about it again and thinking about it some more. We often are. Abigail Schreier in her book Bad Therapy talks about the fact that there's that if the therapeutic model doesn't have isn't solution oriented, like, okay, you show up with this problem and we're going to get you to the point where you solve where the problem is solved, and then therapy's over and you go forward. But this idea of simply showing up to therapy and keep talking about your problems and keep talking about your problems and keep talking about your problems actually does a whole lot more damage than it does goodness. And this is what Paul is talking about. He's talking about the fact that how are we to contend with hard things that are in front of us? Well, in fact, what he's suggesting is the first thing we do is we don't give them all tons of space in our head. We don't give them tons of space in our thoughts. That here he is in prison, and he's saying, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there's any excellence at all, anything worthy of praise, think about that. And from a prison cell, maybe I'm going to think about where my next bowl of gruel is going to come from. Maybe there's a million temptations of things that I could think about, which would generate anxiety, which would make things worse. Would spiral Paul downward. But his suggestion is think about what's true and honorable and good, and that. When we don't do that, when we find ourselves picking up a sad a sadness, and I think that's brilliant, Vicky, what you said, that you've read this passage every time, years after your sister passed. It's a beautiful image of how to deal with the grief. If we're carrying a great grief in our heart that just wants to take up our whole lives, because it will if we let it. And it's not that we shouldn't honor our grief. We totally should. We have to. And we have to figure out how to carry the heaviness of our days. It's not that our griefs are going to go away. That we need to get over them, but that we do have to contend with carrying them day in and day out. And what a beautiful way to contend with that is to come back to this passage that says, yeah, we're going to carry a thing. Yeah, we're in jail. Yeah, we're in a hard place. And yeah, there are true and good and beautiful things, and that we'll fill our head and our minds and our thoughts with those. Not as a way of denial. And this is the thing. We think that's denial, but it's actually fighting against this notion of rumination. So, and it's exactly as you think about it. That we talk about cows and as ruminants, right? We talk about it. Why? Because they have a cud and they have to chew it. And so, which that means is they can't digest things. They have a whole bunch of stomachs and they don't digest things well. And so they have to continue to chew. They have to continue to sit there and just work over the same piece of fibers so that it can actually get broken down enough. And so they just keep chewing on it and keep chewing on it and keep chewing on it. So they can but we as human beings, if we end up in just chewing on things all the time, just chewing on, looking at all of our problems and just chewing on those all the time, we end up getting made into hamburgers. We end up getting eaten up. Because there's really no place for us to open to the true and the good and the beautiful when we find ourselves trapped in this prison. Paul may have been in a prison cell in Rome, but he was nowhere. But he was as free as any man has ever been in his faith and in his ability to, in his faith in Christ, place aside that great temptation to ruminate. In the early church, rumination was considered a sin. That actually was named as such. And the reason is because the great Søren Kierkegaard talks about it. Kierkegaard, I think one of the great minds of Christendom. Truly, truly brilliant, and truly, truly. And he said he has this one line, which just like a lot of Kierkegaard stuff is just like just a gotcha. And he has one for this as well. He says this: our life always expresses the result of our dominant thoughts. That the life that we're living, the actions of our days, what we do and what happens to us and how we receive what happens to us, expresses the result of our dominant thoughts. That's why this is so important. That's why taking something that is hard to break down, taking a loss or a grief or a problem in the world, a political situation, an economic situation, a physical situation about our health, and a situation of, well, being in jail, and simply working it over and working it over and working it over, and the great problem with that is not only does it take up all of our energy and take up all of our ability to be other, but it actually gives way that our life expresses the result of those dominant thoughts. That's what we end up giving expression to. That's what we end up living out. And it's not that we're creating this reality so much as it is we're boxing out all other possibilities of reality. We're boxing out the true and the good and the beautiful. We're boxing about whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is true, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, whatever is excellent, whatever is worthy of praise. We're boxing that out when we sit there and ruminate on our thing, on whatever malady, whatever problem, whatever difficulty we have in our midst. The great image of Gollum in Lord of the Rings is a beautiful image of this. That the precious, that when we discuss our precious, the ring of great power, because often the things that we will ruminate about are the things that we actually seek to give us power. They give us status. They give us a place and a way to be in this world. But it's all to, rather than break down the doors of our prison cells, but they are often those thoughts and those ways of being are to keep our prison cell doors closed. So, friend, and I see it all the time that people are that somewhere, so many people I encountered these days are just in this ruminant phase that they're giving intense, like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen with the presidential election. I wonder what's going to happen with that. I wonder what's going to happen with them. Oh, let me check the Twitter feed. Let me see what's going on. I wonder what's going to happen with the economy. Oh, I wonder what's going on with that. Like, I wonder I just had this person has died, and I just am so sad. And not to say sadness is bad, and not to say we shouldn't be worried about the economy, and we shouldn't be worried about our political. That's not to say those things will not take up space, and that we should not carry them, and we should not be concerned about them. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is when we ruminate on them, when we do not first place before us the majesty of God, the power of God, in that hear those first words, when we do not first rejoice in the Lord always, and again I say rejoice, says Paul, let the solidness of your soul be known to everyone, for the Lord is at hand. Because this is really the thing. But what we're doing when we end up in these places of rumination, when we place up in these places of anxiety, when we end up in these places of worry, what we're doing is forgetting that the Lord is at hand, that the Lord is right there, ready and willing and able to act into any of these situations. It's easy to say, don't worry. It's hard to pull it off, right? Like that's it almost seems a ridiculous thing to say to someone who's worrying. But it is this, but what we can do is take our worry and give it over to the one who holds all things, who knows all things. And this is the purpose, as Paul says, of prayer and supplication. This is the purpose of saying, okay, Lord, I can't figure this out. This is beyond, not only is it too much of a problem or is it too much of a thing, but I can't figure this out. I'm going to give it to you to work on. I'm going to give it to you to carry. I'm going to give it to you through prayer and supplication, through thanksgiving. I'm going to give it to you. And in our giving it over, what happens? The peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, which doesn't make sense why we should have peace in the middle of hard things, but yet we will, and yet we can, and yet we do, will guard our hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Friends, my hope for you in these days is that you will think on the beautiful things of your life. It's a beautiful day. Yeah, it's a little steamy. But there are beautiful places around you. There are beautiful places within you. There are beautiful things to contemplate. There are amazing things. Novak Djokovic just went into the quarters. That's a beautiful thing, and he plays beautiful tennis. Whatever it is, and wherever it is that you find that beauty and that goodness, let it sink into you. Let it soak into you. Let it be a part of your life and your being. Yes, we will grieve our losses. Yes, we will be concerned about the world outside of us and the world within us. That's not going to stop, and nor should it. But when we think what we give our mental capacity to again and again and again, I invite you to return to all that to rejoicing in the Lord. Rejoice again and again. Why does Paul throw that again in there? Because he knows that the conditions of the world, the conditions of the prison cell will insert themselves into our lives. The intrusive thoughts will come into our being. So rejoice in the Lord. And then when we stop, rejoice in the Lord again. Friends, that's my hope for you today. I hope in the heaviness of your days, in the beauty of your days, you will pick the beauty of your days to spend some time on. Honor your griefs. Honor your losses. Honor the anxiety and the difficulties and struggles of the world in which we find ourselves. And then rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say, rejoice. All right, friends, that's my hope for you today. Peace and grace to you all, and we'll pick it up tomorrow with another 11:11.